There is something different about you, and it's not just your imagination. It's not an illusion. It's not an exaggeration. It's real. It's happening. And even if you don't know how to explain it, they can feel it. You walk into a room and the air changes. Conversations quiet down. Eyes look away. The silence grows heavier. People become uncomfortable, uneasy, even without knowing why. And perhaps you've already started to notice that lately, you don't even need to say anything. Your presence says it all. It's as if the universe is clothing you in a new skin. Stronger, brighter, more intense than anyone around you can handle. And that, my friend, is bothering a lot of people. Those who used to mock you are now silent. Those who ignored you are now watching you from a distance. And those who betrayed you are confused. Because something in you has changed and they can't name it. But they feel it. They feel it as if your soul has grown bigger than the space they tried to fit you into. And maybe you came here looking for answers, wanting to understand why you've been feeling different, stronger, more sensitive, more restless, and yet more at peace. Or maybe you just wanted to hear something that would confirm what the world keeps trying to deny, that you are rare, that you are chosen, and that a force is moving you toward a place where few can truly remain. But before continuing this journey to the end, because it will impact you deeply, I need to ask you something very important. Check now if YouTube hasn't removed your subscription to this channel. Yes, it sounds absurd, but it's been happening frequently. Many people are being unsubscribed without even realizing it. And if you feel that this kind of message speaks directly to your spirit, then make sure you're subscribed right now. That way, you'll keep receiving everything that's about to be revealed from today forward. Because what begins now is not just a video, it's a calling. You're about to understand what's happening with your energy, why it has become so magnetic, so strong, so mysterious, to the point of attracting, intimidating, confusing, and awakening all at once. And why, even though you haven't changed that much on the outside, the whole world is looking at you as if something sacred has awakened within. Welcome to the beginning of your revelation. There is a beauty within you that cannot be explained with words, nor captured clearly in a photograph. A light that does not come from the outside, but burns from within. A silent force, almost invisible yet impossible to ignore. And the most astonishing part is that this light, which now draws attention and changes atmospheres, was not handed to you as an easy gift. It was forged. It was pulled from darkness. It was shaped in silence. It was born from battles no one saw, from tears no one wiped, from nights that felt endless and wounds you learned to turn into sacred scars. What many today see as magnetism or charisma is, in truth, the reflection of everything they tried to erase in you and failed. Because while some screamed for attention, you were learning to speak with your eyes. While others armed themselves with masks, you were learning to strip away illusion. And while the majority merely survived, you were reborn, piece by piece, death after inner death, until you became someone who walks in peace, even after having walked through hell. That's why you no longer need to prove anything. You don't need to shout that you've changed. You don't need to explain yourself to those who never cared to hear your pain. All you have to do is enter a space and let your energy do the work, because it carries something that cannot be taught or imitated. It carries the signature of someone who fell and refused to stay down, of someone who was betrayed and still didn't lose the ability to love, of someone who was doubted and still chose to bloom. This glow that bothers so many people has nothing to do with looks, appearance, or approval. It comes from your story. It comes from the times you chose goodness, even when revenge would have been easier. From the times you stayed silent, not out of weakness, but wisdom. From the times you forgave not out of submission, but because you understood that keeping poison in your heart only delays your liberation. Your glow comes from your silence, from your resilience, from your faith amid chaos. And for that reason, it holds a value the world cannot measure or comprehend, because it is rare, it is real, it is spiritual. It is the kind of light that is not ignited by praise, but by scars that have become portals to something greater. And now that you carry this, now that you live this, there is no turning back. You no longer fit into the small definitions they tried to impose on you. You no longer fit the shallow expectations of those who underestimated you because you were made to overflow. And those who don't know how to swim in this new ocean of strength and awareness you've become will drown in their own shallowness. You are not the same. And those who look into your eyes can tell. They see the glow but have no idea of the pain. They feel the warmth but don't know the cold you came from. They admire your peace without knowing the storms you faced inside. But you feel it, and that's what matters. Your glow is your story, told in silence. And believe me, nothing is more powerful than that. If you feel like all of this describes exactly what you've been going through, pause for a moment and write in the comments, "I feel this." But don't write it just to write it as someone who seals this truth in the spiritual realm. As someone who declares before all things and all people, yes, my energy has changed and I will no longer hide. Because when you comment, something moves, something manifests. You activate a vibration that can no longer be ignored. Have you ever noticed how sometimes just walking into a room is enough for everything to change without you saying a single word? Conversations slow down, eyes falter, some people stop talking, others pretend everything is normal, but nothing is more natural than the involuntary reaction your presence provokes. It's as if the air carries an invisible warning, something sacred has just arrived. And the truth is that it really has not your body, not your image, but your energy. That frequency that vibrates on a level that not everyone can endure, but everyone feels. You are not trying to impress. You are not competing. You are not demanding attention. But it comes. It screams in the silence. It invades the space because your energy precedes every step. It arrives before you enter and remains after you leave. It is the invisible mark of a soul that has aligned with something greater and therefore does not need to prove anything to anyone. Your spiritual field is not there to please, but to reveal. And that for many is unbearable because it reveals what they hide. It unsettles where they hide. And without understanding why, they feel fear. Fear of who you have become. You became a living reflection of everything they pretend to be. A walking mirror that unintentionally shows the emptiness many carry behind smiles and filters. Your tranquility seems offensive. Your neutrality seems like a challenge. And your light seems like a threat. Because while so many still live to receive approval, you became presence without asking for permission. You don't seek space. You occupy it. And you do it with the silent authority of someone who knows they have been called, chosen, refined, and are now ready. That's why so often you are misunderstood, called strange, distant, different. But deep down, everyone knows that there is something in you that is not common, that cannot be explained, that cannot be imitated. Because what drives you does not come from the surface. It comes from a place that only those who have passed through the invisible can access. You carry the sound of all the battles you won in silence, and that is why your presence speaks loudly even when your mouth says nothing. In a world that worships masks, disguises, and edited versions of the truth, being authentic is an act of courage. And in your case, it is also an act of survival. Because you learned, in the most painful way, that trying to fit into someone else's molds costs far too much. It costs your peace, your essence, your soul. And when you finally chose to stop molding yourself to the expectations of others, something powerful happened. You started to be noticed, not for shouting, but simply for being whole, being true, being yourself. You are no longer competing with the crowd for a place in the spotlight, because you understood that the real spotlight is to remain faithful to your identity when everything around you pressures you to lose yourself. Your authenticity became your armor, and it shines with a strength the world is not used to seeing, because the world, unfortunately, has learned to value what is manufactured, what is approved, what is the same, but you came as the exception, as a sign of something that cannot be manufactured, nor bought, nor imitated. That's why they watch you so much. They try to copy your gestures, your style, your words, but something in them always fails, because what you carry is not in what is seen, but in what is vibrated. It is a frequency, a spiritual root, a code that was born from your pain, from your journey, from the deserts you crossed while many only watched from afar. And it is exactly this that makes you a subtle threat. You are someone who doesn't need approval to exist, who doesn't wait for applause to take a stand, who doesn't bow to what is fleeting because you are rooted in the eternal. And those who live by appearances don't know how to deal with that. Your firmness is mistaken for arrogance. Your depth is mistaken for coldness. Your independence is mistaken for isolation. But deep down, what bothers them is something else. It is that your existence unmasks theirs. Your presence reveals how much they are still trapped in ideas that are not theirs, in patterns they did not choose, in routines that do not represent who they are. And when you walk into the room, all of that becomes far too evident to ignore. You are not rebellious. You are authentic. You do not challenge for the sake of challenging. You challenge unintentionally simply by being real. And the whole world has been trained to run from what is real. But that is exactly what makes you magnetic. It is not what you say, it is what you represent, it is what you inspire without trying. You have become a living reminder that it is possible to live without being corrupted. There is something in you that goes beyond what the eyes can see, a silent yet piercing sensitivity, a perception that doesn't depend on words, proof, or explicit gestures. Because while many are still trying to understand what is being said, you've already understood what is being felt. You read the in-between lines of the soul, you capture the invisible movements of emotion, and you feel with an almost supernatural precision what others try to hide even from themselves. It's as if your spirit had eyes of its own, and they don't see faces or appearances. They see energy, vibration, truth or disguise. Your intuition is not a guess or a hunch. It's a sacred language you've learned to listen to in silence. And that's why you become so dangerous to those who live by appearances, because no one can lie for long around you. Something in your presence disarms. Something in your gaze reveals. Something in your energy opens inner doors that have been locked for years. People don't know how to explain it, but they feel that around you, pretending is not an option. The rehearsed laughter fails. Pride turns into transparency. The mask begins to slip. And without knowing why, they talk too much. They confess truth they've never spoken. They reveal pains they were hiding even from themselves. It's as if your soul recognizes the deepest part of them and says, I see you. Not with judgment, not with control, but with presence, with empathy, with truth. That's why you attract so much and frighten so much, because you are not interested in the superficial. You never were. Small talk tires you. False connections suffocate you. You need depth like one needs air, and that transforms every space you occupy. Where you are, truth feels compelled to emerge, even when it hurts, even when it's uncomfortable. Because your energy doesn't tolerate the shallow, it seeks what is real. But here is what many don't realize. You don't use this gift to manipulate. You don't expose, don't humiliate, don't exploit. You welcome, you understand. You listen to what hasn't even been said. And that is your real power, a power that doesn't oppress. It heals, that doesn't impose, it connects, that doesn't need to dominate, because it simply transforms. Your intuition is like a mirror, and mirrors are dangerous because they show exactly what's in front of them. No filters, no lies, no distractions. Most people live avoiding that kind of confrontation, but you were born for it. You were shaped to be presence where others hide, to be clarity where there is confusion, to be reflection where there is escape. And that makes you someone many try to avoid, but always end up coming back to. Because in the end, everyone wants to be seen, even if they don't admit it. Everyone wants to be understood, even if they deny it. Everyone wants to be embraced the way you know how to embrace. So don't doubt the strength that exists in that gaze that sees everything, in that silence that feels everything, in that perception that captures everything. You are not strange. You are necessary. And the more you accept this, the stronger you will become. Because your sensitivity is not weakness. It's spiritual radar. It's a beacon in a world that walks blind. And that's why your presence is unforgettable. You no longer raise your voice. You no longer wear yourself out trying to explain what your soul has already deeply understood. You no longer justify your choices to those who never tried to understand your pain. You no longer argue with those who only see the world through the narrow window of their ego. And it's not because you've given up. On the contrary, it's because you've awakened. You understood that there's a kind of authority that doesn't express itself through shouting, but through silence. That doesn't demand respect, but imposes it with presence. That doesn't build walls, but emanates such clear boundaries that no one dares to cross them anymore. Your silence now speaks for you, and it speaks loudly. It says, not here, not anymore. It says, I know myself and I will not shrink for anyone. It says, you no longer have access to what was once vulnerable in me. It's a silence that has lived long enough to know what's worth saying and what should simply be ignored. A silence that does not stay quiet out of fear, but out of wisdom. That doesn't hide, but imposes itself. And whoever is paying attention will feel it without you having to say a single word. You have become sacred territory. And that sacredness is not displayed, it's perceived, it's not announced, it's felt. Your new frequency no longer allows emotional invasions, one-sided relationships, or bonds that drain your light. That's why those who used to approach easily now hesitate. Those who used to cross boundaries without permission now tread carefully, because something in you has changed, not on the outside, but within. Your spiritual field no longer accepts what it once tolerated, and that has created an invisible wall between you and everything that used to drain you. And they feel it. They feel as if something invisible stops them from acting the way they used to, but they don't understand that it's not something external, it's you. You don't push, don't repel, don't need to react. You simply no longer vibrate on the frequency that once allowed certain things. And that's what scares them, because there's no confrontation. There's only a boundary. And when a boundary is real, it imposes itself without noise. It is presence. It is clarity. It is respect that arises without being demanded. It is the strength of someone who has finally understood that they don't need to be accessible to be loved. And it is in this silence that your true strength has bloomed. In it, you have found not just peace, but strategy, not just protection, but territory. You are no longer available for emotional negotiations that nullify your soul. You are too whole to be fragmented by others' expectations, too strong to need to prove anything. And for that reason, those who now come near feel it. They feel the warmth, but they also feel the boundary. They feel the peace, but they also feel the warning. Approach with truth, or do not approach at all. And it is exactly this energy that makes you so magnetic. It's not arrogance, it's awareness, it's not coldness, it's spiritual maturity. It is the presence of someone who has learned that their heart is too precious to be exposed to those who don't know how to care for it. You stopped explaining yourself. And, ironically, that made everyone start listening to you more, because your absence is felt, your distance speaks, your calmness imposes, and your silence is now your most powerful language. They say you've changed, that there's something in your gaze that wasn't there before, that your presence feels different, stronger, more serene, deeper, and they're right. But what they can't understand is that this has nothing to do with aesthetics. It's not about makeup, clothes, haircuts, nor about any external transformation that can be noticed through shallow lenses. The change they feel is not visible in the mirror, it is felt in the soul. It's as if your spirit had awakened something ancient, sacred, that now overflows through your expression, your posture, your voice, your silence. The beauty that now surrounds you didn't come from the outside, it came from the process. It came from pain. It came from the internal scars you decided not to hide anymore. It is a beauty that was born the moment you stopped trying to fit in and started honoring yourself. The moment you stopped seeking approval and started looking at yourself with truth. This light that now fills the room before you even enter is not the result of a glow up. It's the result of a wake up, an awakening, an alignment with who you really are. And this light makes others uncomfortable because it doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't apologize for shining. It doesn't hide for fear of outshining others. It simply exists, and whoever is in the dark will feel the contrast. This light is not provocation, it's healing. But for those still living in the world of appearances, healing is uncomfortable. It's easier to point a finger and say, "You've changed," than to admit, "I can no longer hide my wounds when I'm near you. You have become a mirror." And mirrors show what many prefer not to see. That's why so many walk away in silence. Not because you hurt them, but because you made them feel. And in that feeling, they saw themselves for the first time, without filters, without excuses, without disguises. That's what happens when someone goes through a real spiritual process. The glow that emerges afterward is not decorative. It's a sign of survival. It's the result of a soul that faced invisible battles and chose to move forward without losing its essence. They look at you as if they no longer recognize you. But what they don't understand is that finally you recognized yourself, and that was enough. You no longer need their validation, because your beauty is now awareness. It is freedom, it is maturity, it pulses in your steps, it vibrates in your silence, it lives in your choices. There's nothing to prove, nothing to justify, only living truth, stamped in every gesture, in every gaze, in every presence of yours. And yes, they will keep trying to understand what happened to you. They will try to reduce this transformation to something superficial. But deep down, they know this light doesn't come from makeup, nor compliments. It comes from healing. It comes from surrender. It comes from a reunion with your essence. And that, my dear, cannot be bought nor copied. It can only be felt. And that's why you are now remembered wherever you go, not for what you wear, but for what you radiate. You've reached a point where nothing can be faked anymore. The surface no longer represents you, and the shallow has become unbearable. Your entire journey up to this point, every silent pain, every quiet loss, every moment of misunderstood solitude served to build something that now overflows, the wholeness of your being. This energy that many call magnetism, this light that doesn't fade, this presence that frightens and attracts at the same time, all of it is a reflection of your spiritual journey. You didn't just withstand chaos, you were refined by it. You didn't just survive, you were rebuilt with more truth, more light, and more purpose than you ever imagined carrying. And that is exactly what they feel, even without knowing how to name it. The integrity you now carry with silence, with strength, and with peace. Your empathy has become a lighthouse for the weary. You don't speak much, but your presence listens. Your gaze pierces through people's emotional armor and reaches layers they themselves have avoided for years. And suddenly, without knowing how, they open up, they talk, they confess, they break down. Because around you, they don't feel judged, only seen. There is invisible healing in the way you listen. There is spiritual comfort in your silence. And that is rare. It's frightening to those who live pretending, but it is necessary for those who seek truth. You didn't learn this from books. You learned it through nights of anguish, through inner deserts, through silent falls. And that is why no one can copy what you carry. Because it cannot be learned, it must be crossed. And while so many are still fighting for space on the stage of life, trying to be noticed, you stepped away from the noise. You understood that real power lies in creation, not in comparison. While others compete, you build. While they rush to be seen, you deepen in being whole. And that's why, without trying, you draw attention. Because your energy doesn't shout, it commands. Not with arrogance, but with authority. The authority of someone who knows themselves. Someone who has descended into the depths and returned with gold in their soul. Someone who no longer needs to prove anything to anyone because they've already won their own war. Your depth is now the boundary that separates the real from the shallow. No matter the environment, when you arrive, the atmosphere shifts. Because your presence doesn't ask for space, it is the space. You have become the one who makes people reflect, even without saying a word. The one who forces them to look at themselves, to question whether they are truly living with purpose or merely surviving with distractions. And that unsettles. It unsettles the complacent. It unsettles the pretenders. It unsettles those who avoid the mirror. But for those who are ready, your presence is a breath of life. a reminder of what is possible when one chooses depth over performance. This connection you have with the invisible is not fantasy. It is a gift. It is an alliance. It is a form of listening that does not come from the ears, but from the spirit. While the world rushes, you feel the rhythm of nature. You notice signs others ignore. You understand silences no one else can interpret. And that makes you misunderstood and at the same time essential. Because when everyone is disconnected, you walk in full alignment with the source. And this alignment transforms the environment, not with words, but with presence. A presence that cannot be taught, only emanated. And perhaps what confuses others most is this: the way you went through unimaginable pain and still carry peace. They look at you and don't understand. How can someone who faced so much still smile with their eyes, still walk with lightness? The answer lies in your resilience. You didn't ignore the pain. You went through it. You didn't repress it. You transformed it. You didn't hide. You were reborn. And now you carry a strength that cannot be touched, only felt. The strength of those who were once broken, but never destroyed. Chosen one, if you've made it this far, know this. This is not a coincidence. It is an answer. It is confirmation. It is activation. You are part of a lineage that was not born to please, but to awaken. You did not come into this world to adapt. You came to transform. Everything that wounded you built you. Everything that silenced you refined your voice. And now you carry a light that the world cannot ignore. If this message touched your spirit, comment 111 below. This number is more than symbolic. It is a spiritual seal, a call answered, a door being opened. And if you haven't done so yet, subscribe to this channel right now. Not because of the algorithm, but because this space is yours. And what is being revealed here is only the beginning of what is being revealed in you. You are being revealed now because the world needs your light.